Good morning, everyone. My name is Francisco Mingoranzi. I'm the Secretary General of CISPE.cloud, Cloud Infrastructure Service Provider in Europe. I'm delighted to have you all with us this morning, this distinguished panel. We are here joined by MEP Maria Manuel Letao Marquez. Maria Manuel, if you agree. Thank you. Vice President in the IMCO committee. And we'll be shortly also joined by MEP Eva Kaili, who is an MEP, a distinguished MEP in the ITRE committee and also in the Artificial Intelligence Special Committee, which is of, I believe, of relevance for this webinar. I would also like to welcome Laurent Godefroy, who is a senior partner in the firm, the French firm GID, who will give us an introduction to the DMA and especially its relevance for the cloud computing sector. And that will be very interesting since I think we are the first event on the substance of this DMA since its adoption 2 days ago. And last but not least, which will conclude a set of short 5 minutes intervention, Mr. Alban Schmutz, who is the chairman of CISPE and also Vice President at OVH. Before we start, we'd like to welcome those of you participating, also inform you that there will be press. There is press attending this webinar, so you are on the record and everything you can say can be held against you. We will, at the very end of the presentation and as part of the Q&A, we will welcome questions from the participants. And before I give the floor to Laurent for a short introduction, I'd like to make a point. We strive to try to get gender balance on this webinar, and I think except for my humble person, and as soon as Eva joins us, we will be achieving this very important objective, and we will try to continue doing so through 2021. I think it's a very important aspect of what we do. With that being said, please, and while we wait for, I think Eva has just joined us. So while Eva connects to this thing, Eva, we introduce you briefly, and we will call on you to weigh in after Laurent's presentation. So please, Laurent, while Eva joins, would you get us started? Thank you very much. Thank you again.
Thank you very much, Francisco. Thank you very much to CISPE for organizing this first event on the subject. We didn't have so much time to analyze a text which is extremely detailed, but today we want to give you a little flavor of how the cloud community perceives that text and how I perceive that text as a lawyer. If you don't know, I have been involved in the Google search case. I am representing still a French client in this case, and therefore the notion of gatekeeper for me is extremely important. Why is this text so ambitious and so revolutionary? First of all, as I just mentioned, the Digital Market Act introduced rules for platforms that act as gatekeepers in the digital sector. What is a gatekeeper? I think it's important to spend a few seconds on that. There is a definition. A gatekeeper is a player that has a significant impact on the internal market. It serves most of all as an important gateway for business users to reach customers. And last criteria, it has an entrenched and durable position. If you listen to the intervention of Commissioner Vestager yesterday, you heard her say it is easy to imagine how the combination of those criteria can give an unfair competitive advantage to those gatekeepers on certain services. The DMA precisely aims at preventing gatekeepers from imposing such unfair conditions to business users and to customers. The second important part, I believe, from a legal point of view as to why this is important, is because it introduced ex ante legislation. In my field, against Google, against other gatekeeper, have always acted ex post. There was an abuse pursuant to 102 of the treaty, and then we were trying to explain to the DG Comp and the Commission why this abuse had to be stopped. And in the Google case, for instance, it took 7 years between the introduction of the first complaint and the actual decision from the European Commission. And the case is still going on, and the effects are still going on. What is really interesting with the DMA is that you will have ex ante legislation. We are trying to prevent such abuse from occurring. I will quote a sentence that summarizes this spirit. The DMA will minimize the harmful structural effects of these unfair practices ex ante, without limiting the European Union's ability to intervene ex post via the enforcement of existing competition law rules. So the DMA and the rules on abuse of position, of dominant position, are complementary. The last point of my introduction, why is this text very important for the cloud computing sector? We have already identified a few provisions which we believe are important to make sure that there's a level playing field in that market. The first one, gatekeepers shall not use data obtained from their business users to compete against these business users. That's the first important principle for the cloud community. On the issue of interoperability, gatekeepers refrain from technically restricting the ability of end users to switch between different software applications to be accessed using the operating system of the gatekeeper. So here we have the notion of freedom of users to change providers, and that's extremely important. And the last important criteria, there are others, but this is the third one, gatekeepers will be obliged to apply fair and non-discriminatory general conditions of access for business users to its software applications. All in all, I think this draft legislation is quite revolutionary. After years of criticism that the European Union was not doing enough in the field of the digital world, Commissioner Breton and Commissioner Vestager have innovated. That's how I see it. They have innovated to make a dramatic change on how gatekeeper will do business in the future in Europe. For sure, there will be attempts to try to water down this important proposal. As far as I'm concerned, I believe that the principles that are here today, in particular for the cloud community, the principles should be maintained, and we should fight for that. And they should also be completed with a few rules that are probably still missing from the text. The last point, Europe is showing the example again. And I am convinced that many other jurisdictions worldwide will get very inspired from the text that has been published yesterday. Voilà, Francisco, a few words of introduction. You're on mute, Francisco.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it, Laurent. I wanted to welcome MEP Eva Kaili to our group. I introduced you before you arrived, but since now you're here, we also mentioned the gender balance. Thank you for accepting this invitation. I think it's important. We asked you to go first on the program on the assumption that you might have to drop out before the end of the hour, and that was okay with Maria Manuel. If you agree, we can proceed with this order, even if you can stay a bit longer and participate in the Q&A later. Please go ahead. Go ahead for your 5 minutes introduction. Thank you very much.
Hi. Sorry, I had a delay of my previous meeting, and I tried to be fast. So thank you so much for the invitation and setting up this event. It's very timely, as timely as it could be. And with my colleague Maria Manuel, we can work actually from ITRE and IMCO a lot on these files. So it's very useful for us to understand the devil that hides in the details of it, and to see if we can actually succeed what is expected. I believe that we are trying to be proactive to make sure and ensure that internet will have established rules that would improve competition. But I think that the core of our concern is to make sure also that privacy and our data are there, and we are aware of how they are being collected, used, and exchanged, in order to say that Europe is translating properly human rights and our values and our principles into the digital era. So this is the effort. I understand that whoever is feels that is a gatekeeper, maybe like 20 companies, 30 companies worldwide, they are already in a defensive mode. I would say that they have to make some changes, but in the end, I believe that everybody wants to have a level playing field and an environment where rules will be set that had to be there 20 years ago. I'm not saying that I agree with everything that's presented, or I'm not saying that we shouldn't like mandate a lot. So with Maria, we have a lot of work to do, because also being a gatekeeper, but having different business models or having different responsibilities is really important to take under consideration, and to make sure that what we try to do to improve competition will not harm safety, or we will not disrupt negatively any business model because it's too big. We will try to have a balanced approach. And as Maria has a lot of experience, because she has been a minister for the future, I would say, in the government. So she has experience herself. I have been working and I've been a user of all the different technologies that now will be affected. And I can understand also what I don't want to miss out, and how I would feel more secure, and I would feel I'm in a trusted environment. So the main things that I believe are changing here is, first of all, we're going to have clear definitions. We're going to have a set of clear rules. This doesn't mean they will not be like flexible or with exceptions, but we will try to be proactive, basically, for the future. And we will try to achieve what I mentioned, to have a trusted environment, to make sure that the gatekeepers have their equal share of responsibility, that will improve competition. And this would not happen in the way it happened until now. I think this is actually a good thing, because competition was just about like prices and big market share control. But I think it has to do also with access. It has to do with excluding companies. It has to do with self-preferencing to an extreme level, because I cannot say that self-preferencing could not be also helpful and provide us with better services. And of course, I think one of the things that's not addressed here is like the tax evasion, but this is a different discussion. Okay, so these are the main things I believe we try to address, and I would focus mostly on. I say that because I understand excluding someone because you cannot control their safety model, the way they use the data. Yes, but not because they might harm your business model, because I believe when you're so big, you can take this kind of competition, and you should enhance it. So some do, some don't, of the gatekeepers. That's why I believe we have to have different approaches. Again, the main arguments of the Commission, the main concerns we had was that self-preferencing was harming competition, that they were using their size, they were too big to be able to manipulate or control or bully prices to become lower, or like to kick you out of the market because they made a more competitive model, or because they acquire everybody that could become competition in advance by using confidential information or private data that they have. So in the end of it all, I believe we need to be more clear and understand that this cannot be accepted. And I think we would all agree. I don't think anybody would disagree, even the owners of of the biggest companies. They would say we try. They would say we don't think anything like this has happened, at least of our, with us knowing about it, of it. So I think we would all agree in the principles. Finally, because I prefer to make this a live discussion, because I have not yet went into the depth of the proposal, but I have worked and understood the concerns we have. Is that in the end we need to have a set of rules and clear definitions, so that you know what you're dealing with, you know your responsibilities, your liabilities. Citizens have more options. Businesses can have their business models without being all the time acquired by the big ones before they manage to get a fair market share. And also to achieve some kind of reciprocity as Europeans with US and China, that they have a different approach on how they can use my data and how they can evade my privacy and how they can use that against me. And this needs to be clear. We need to have explicit consent also of the user. We need to have a fair competition ecosystem for the startups, so that they are not scared to go up there and try and put their ideas on the table. So this is it. And because I had with Maria, we are working together in STOA, the Science and Technology Committee. We had a big annual event with Shoshana Zhubov. She was very outspoken for surveillance capitalism. It seems like this comes as a response to what she raised as her concerns. And she said, like, they're stealing our data, we give them for free. I wouldn't say this is 100% accurate. I would say we give them out very cheap. So I think we should have the option to pay and retain our privacy. We should have the option to understand how our data are being used. We should have more control there. And we should definitely be proactive, because things now might not seem that they can threaten even our democratic system. But we had the experience of Cambridge Analytica, or like targeted advertisement, micro-targeting, that could influence perceptions. And it's not about consumers, it's about people and users. So I think it's a very interesting debate that's just starting. We can talk in details if you have the QA there. I will try to stay until the QA. So this would be my approach. And I believe we should also, as I said, make sure even for the gatekeepers, we will have different levels, different approaches there, to ensure that we will not be just aggressive, but we would be useful for citizens, for businesses, and for them to offer the amazing services that they offer. So I want to say that to be fair, and to show that it's not trying to make a name or trying to be populistic. It has to do with putting some regulations on the table. So thank you for that.
Sorry. Thank you, much appreciated. I will come back to you with some questions towards the end, about, the key aspect. Maybe, if you want to drop some names, should be in this hearing. But before that, I would like to invite maybe Letao Marquez. Maria Manuel, please, the floor is yours. If you can try to keep it to 5 minutes, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for this invitation. Like Eva, I have read the proposals, but I need to study them. That is different from read, but I think this problem with all the players, all the team. And let me start by saying that since 2010, we have been saying the same thing. Online platforms and online markets have something right, but also something wrong with their model. We love them and we use them for social networking, for shopping, for entertainment, for our work, to get information, to store our data, and so on. And they are also useful for SMEs and micro companies because they allow them to sell their products all over the world in a faster and less risky way than before. It was almost impossible for most of them. This is the bright side of the moon. And at the very beginning, it was the only one we saw. The dark side is the illegal, harmful content, disinformation, target advertisement, improper use of our data, inexplicable algorithms, unsafe products and services, weak redress mechanisms, unfair competition, among many other problems we have been identifying. But by now, everyone seems to agree that there are problems and that we need to fix them. Ex ante, as Laurent told before. It's very different, very, very, very important in terms of results and how fast are the remedies to this situation. So we must add that even big online players have agreed regulation is needed. I don't know all this regulation, but regulation is needed in order to improve certainty about their duties. So what is DMA for? Let me just highlight some points. First of all, it's interesting, this tired regulation, far from one size fits all, that will unburden smaller platforms and addressing the problems caused by larger scales. Gatekeepers will have greater duties and obligations as they should. And what will these gatekeepers have to comply with? Let me highlight only 4 topics. First, the Digital Markets Act will give business access to certain data about them held by gatekeepers. It's a very important point because you know very well that nowadays business users, at least in some platforms, don't have access to their data. They don't know what are their clients, for instance. It's very important they have access on how their products and services are performing in gatekeepers' platforms, for instance. Second, bigger players will also have to stop locking in end users and business users and must allow business users to offer the same products or service to end user through third-party services at price or conditions of their choosing. Users and business also do not have to suffer from cross-tying, needing a Gmail or a Microsoft account to access certain features offered by these companies. Third point, probably the most difficult to manage, data portability of businesses and users and the interoperability for third parties must be available. This is a very important critical point also for cloud services. It's a point that people fear when they use cloud service to store their data. So, as an example, gatekeepers must allow the installation and effective use of third-party software application or software application stores. I'm very curious to see how policy choice and technical solution will work together to fulfill this obligation. However, while the DMA provides for interoperability in ancillary service, I'm not sure that it's the same for core services. It's a doubt. If someone can explain me, please do it, because it's a doubt I have. And fourth, the unfair practice of better ranking gatekeepers' own service and products compared to those offered by business, because there are some gatekeepers, not all of them, not all the platforms that are competitors of their business users. So compared to those offered by business on the gatekeepers platform will be stopped, and the use of business data to compete against them is also targeted, and also this is a very important point. This means Amazon products, for instance, only to give an example, cannot be unfairly ranked against similar products on Amazon marketplace, and Amazon cannot use data on performance and customers from business on their marketplace to gain unfair advantage selling its own products. Only to highlight. My question is about enforcement. As Vestager, Vice President Vestager said on Tuesday, no legislation is any better than the enforcement of it, and I have some worries how these legislation are going to be enforced. So to sum up, I believe Commission proposal is a good start, but of course they are going to be improved. The DMA and of course the SCA are going to be improved, and we will work in the European Parliament to shape this legislation in a way that upholds consumer rights and stimulate innovation and competition. In order we can better performance in our job, it's very important to continue consultation and debates with all relevant stakeholders as we are doing today, and thank you for inviting me.
Thank you very much, Eva Maria. Thank you. We took good note. We saw, from Eva, no trade-off on public health, and then data control, data portability, very important element for you. I'd like to invite Alban Schmus to tell us more about what this means in terms of software licensing and unfair practices in the cloud computing. So maybe Alban, the floor is yours. I know I'm asking for 5 minutes. If you can hold it in 5 minutes, I thought you.
I saw it was 50 minutes. So thanks Francisco. So first I wanted to thank everyone who has been joining today for this panel. I think this question of the DMA is something very important. So I think we have here a historical piece of regulation, and this is something very, very important to the digital market and the users and customers across Europe. So first I wanted to say that I think with the DMA, the Commission has scored an important goal, and even the competition is not over. So it's a bit of a metaphor here, but I think this is very the feeling that we have while reading this. So why is it so important? I think Laurent mentioned it earlier. So I would say competition cases are very slow. And so when something is not working properly on the market, it takes years. And in the cloud market, these years, up to 10 or 15 years, you have the time to kill a company 3 or 4 times before having this case solved. So that's why we are, as CISPE, really supporting the Commission's aspiration here and to create a faster and fairer system for the competition here. And we are also happy as CISPE and our members, which are all cloud infrastructure services providers. So we are all competing to each other across Europe. but we think that a fair working market is something very important, and we are happy that some of our concerns raised in the public consultation from the DSA, DMA earlier today, this year, have been taken into account by the Commission. So just maybe to let our audience understand what is a topic for cloud infrastructure services regarding the DMA. So we are in the situation where some, I would say, software legacy vendors have in certain segments of the market 80–90% of market shares and are using that market position regarding the, I would say, the conditions of the licenses they provide to their customers to have unfair advantages against competing offerings on the cloud infrastructure segment, and having higher prices on the licenses if you are going to a competitor, for example, or having issues regarding bringing your own licenses you already purchased, but you want to bring them to another provider, or even having some technical restrictions to do so. So these are very core concerns we have. In the top, I have to add also the questions regarding bundle practices, where paying software licenses will give you for free infrastructure layers, where lots of players are competing here, and then you are in an unfair position. So this is a core issue we have, and this is about, it is not about cloud computing. So we are very happy that cloud computing is part of scope of the DMA as well as a operating system. But this is not only about cloud computing. This is about the continuum between I would say, the IT world where of the licenses and the cloud computing today, and I would say the interconnection between both. So to come to the text and to bring a bit of added value here regarding what we think about the text, there are very interesting things for the cloud market in our point of view. The point made in Article 5E regarding the identity management services is something very important, since you can lock in your customers when you don't have the choice and the interoperability required regarding identity and access management. So this is something very interesting in the text. Identifying the gatekeepers also being mandatory, where you can choose the operating systems and the hardware you want to run the software is something very important. So it will limit the unfair practices on having, I would say, different licensing models between cloud providers and the own offering of a software vendor, which also have a cloud infrastructure offering, for example. So this is something very important. And the language of the Act also suggests a wider category of gatekeepers that may include dominant players in cloud adjacent markets, so including some of these legacy software vendors. So this is something quite interesting that we find inside the text today, even if this needs further investigation. But what we think also today seems to be missing is, for example, that the bundling I've been mentioning regarding, I would say, having free cloud infrastructure services when you are a customer of licenses. I think this is something that needs to be tackled still, and maybe is not appearing as such in the proposed regulation here. We also think that some practices regarding the software licenses seems to be not clearly tackled in the I would say in the proposed regulation. So we will have further investigation to make on this. And we also think that, I would say, criteria needs to take into account the situation of the B2B market. So gatekeeper in general, I think it's very interesting with the criteria taken. But we also have situation where you have, as I mentioned, in some vertical markets on specific dominant position on subsegments of the market that needs to be taken properly into account. And this is something I think not only for cloud infrastructure providers, but for our customers is very important to have a leverage there to solve situations where they are in today, where they are locked in and they cannot choose freely, I would say, the provider they want to work with. So this is something very, very important. So maybe to just a final word, since I think my 5 minutes are over, Francisco. But this matters, I think, is very important, since all these practices basically are raising costs for the cloud customers in Europe. And raising costs means basically less innovation, since it's less money you put on having other services with additional added value, and this is something very key. So it's harming the European businesses to that extent. So this is also harming, I would say, competitors on the market. This is another topic. This is very important, and so we need to have very, I would say, strong and clear rules regarding that. And we have a unique opportunity with this piece of regulation to create those ex-ante rules, to have things working properly from the beginning, and not having to wait for 10 years to have a potential solving of the case. And I think, and I agree with what has been said before, I think this will be inspiring much more abroad, outside of the European borders. So I think GDPR was inspiring outside of the European borders. I think this piece of regulation is able to create history as well. And we need to have it right for the cloud services as well, since the cloud services are in the core of any organizations today regarding environmental and digital transformation. So I count on the Parliament and the Council to work towards that goal. And as members of the Parliament we have today, I want to tell you also that CISPE is fully engaged to be, I would say, with you and to work with you toward that goal, and to have it made also quickly. Hopefully also this regulation will be, I would say, voted, finalized and voted, I would say, quickly. I think this is also an important topic, so that we can have an effect on the market very quickly. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Alban. This is very interesting. You've mentioned 3 practices which arguably are captured under the new proposed text for cloud computing: the identity and access management, interoperability to avoid lock-in, the freedom of a cloud customer to go on the cloud with their own software and choose whatever provider they want, and some unfair practices which include bundling of certain products, maybe sometimes for free with other paid for product, and creating a situation where this discriminates against competing offer on the market. So I'd like to now start maybe asking some questions to the group. Maybe I'll start on the substance and go first back to Laurent, and then back to Maria Manuel and Eva. So for the first question on the substance, for Laurent, you heard some element of substance in the and problems in the cloud market. Do you think that the current proposal covers these topics or sufficiently address this, let's say, unfair licensing practices when it comes to software and use of the cloud for customers? I also would like to go back to Maria Manuel and Eva. I think Maria Manuel already dropped a few names. Maybe Eva could tell us if there is also an agreement in the political family about what type of gatekeeper, which gatekeepers. Also, for me, very, very interesting if you could share a bit of insight on what areas will be key focus for you in the Parliament, and maybe also ask Maria Manuel what do you think really is important that the DMA delivers for both the citizen and consumers and the businesses. So, but maybe first go to Laurent on the scope and the substance. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Francisco, for your questions concerning unfair licensing terms and interoperability issues that Alban has talked about. As I mentioned in my introduction, the overall aim of the DMA is precisely to prevent gatekeepers from imposing unfair conditions on businesses and consumers. So there are a few examples that are a bit more detailed and that I presume could be covering the issue of unfair licensings and issues of interoperability. At the same time, it is not yet extremely clear in the text whether these kind of issues are actually being covered. So that's a first remark. And I also presume that in the next few months, we will have exchange with the persons in charge of the drafting and also members of the European Parliament, Marie-Emmanuelle, Eva, to see how we can make sure that before this text is being adopted, we have a bit more clarity, because these texts will be applied for the future, and it's important to have some clarity in order not to have discussions once the text is being adopted, because as you know, when you are a good lawyer, you can make sure that the text means exactly the contrary to what it is actually written. So another point I wanted to react to Marie-Emmanuelle as well on the issue she mentioned earlier about enforceability. The key part, another key part of this text, so that it is actually efficient, is the part dealing with sanctions. And here today, you also have a text like the rules I'm dealing with on a daily basis, abuse of dominant position, unfair practices. This text is providing for sanctions. The Commission will be able to impose very important fines, around 10% of the gatekeepers' worldwide turnover, if these gatekeepers do not actually respect the rules that are in text. And that's, to respond to your point, Marie-Emmanuelle, a very important point. Another revolution, so to speak, because there have been discussions in the past about, do we need to unbundle gatekeeper? Do we need to go as far as unbundling them if they do not understand what competition means? Here, you also have an interesting provision which says that if you have a situation of systemic infringement to the text, the Commission will be able to go as far as imposing structural remedies. And what does it mean? It means the obligation to sell a unit, the obligation to sell assets, the obligation to sell intellectual property rights or brands. So here also you have a text that is extremely far-reaching in terms of pressure being put on the gatekeepers to make sure that this time the rules are being respected. Voilà, Francisco, two contributions to your question and to a point made by Marie-Emmanuelle earlier.
Thank you very much. I'd like to go back to our distinguished member of parliament and ask, so since Eva wasn't proposing, who should be auditioned, do you think? We hear the parliament will put forward some audition. Should it be a small audition? Should it be broad? Who should be there? I think I would be happy to hear from you a little bit more, and also from both of you after that. What kind of area do you expect the negotiation to be the most difficult in this kind of legislation? Please.
Okay. Let me just start by saying that the main principles, I mentioned it before, is to be business model neutral, tech neutral, technology neutral, and innovation friendly. I think these are the main principles that I would like to follow. So this is not to target specific names, is to make sure that there are clear definitions that whoever violates them or will violate them in the future, so not just the existing ones, but also to have clarity about the future, legal certainty about the future, they should respect. So of course, Facebook, Google, Amazon should be there. They became too big online in their services. And we had a lot of issues with micro-targeting, political advertisements, start targeting with unclear understanding on how they use the data. But we saw also unfair competition through them acquiring competitors and through them pushing for different prices to the businesses that they are being presented through their platforms. And I think these are the things we were trying to fix. So it would be great to have meetings with them. I saw the meetings that took place in US, and I think we should basically not just try to get like the big names. We have to have like a team from each company that they can be really clear on their answers. So they have to explain how things work, not say I don't remember, I cannot recall, I'm not aware. We would like to have clear answers. And as for the sanctions and fines, I believe we need to work on exemptions. Why do I say that? We need to have a clear set of rules, a toolbox there. But we have to make sure that the reason for somebody not being included, or the reason that there is no interoperability, is to ensure safety of the software and the hardware. It's because some people don't follow security criteria. It's not that we are trying to find ways to sanction or to fine. This should be a consequence if you don't follow the principles that we would like to achieve. And this has been completely unregulated. So we need to find the gold balance there. I believe we need to be, as I said, proactive. We need to talk to the big ones. I said like 20, 30 gatekeepers exist globally, that they should have more responsibilities there. And we should open up the competition and make sure we're going to have like 100 of those. But it shouldn't be, there should be clear definition, but we have also to make sure that there will be different approaches for the different services and business models of the gatekeepers themselves. So we have a lot of work in the details with Maria, and I hope that we will manage to keep our initial intentions untouched, which is to make sure there will be innovation and competition, and we will have more choices for citizens, more control. We will have interoperability options and portability of our data. And we will clarify a bit who has the responsibility and the liability if something goes wrong, ensuring privacy and safety at the same time, not compromising one to have the other, and clear understanding on how our data are being used. Because as I said, people need they like free services. Of course, in some cases, they actually pay a lot. I mean, you have to pay subscriptions or like to receive an application, but still they feel they have free services. We need to make sure that they have the choice to understand that if they would pay, for example, or that free means that I can use your data not just to improve my service, but to sell it to a third party. But I can use it like across my products and services. We need to have explicit consent on how the users' data are being used. So this would be my first reaction to what you asked.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Eva. I'd like to also ask Maria Manuel on this historic legislation, probably, an example for other countries to consider. What are the pressure points, the key elements where you anticipate also this debate, and who should be auditioned?
Thank you, Francisco. I'm sorry. Let me. Okay, it's okay. This is a very important point. Alban refers that is how to organize a global alliance with other countries and regions all over the world in order not to have a balkanization of these platforms. And we did that with GDPR, and we need to do that with these two proposals, with these two regulations, at least the issues that we are trying to solve with these two proposals, and with other ones related to them, such as data governance, Data Act, the artificial intelligence framework that the Commission are preparing now. And this is a very important work. Also, we can do in the Parliament. Last week, I organized a meeting with the ambassadors of Latin America, because I'm the coordinator of my group for Aerolat. And it's very important to discuss with Colombia, with Chile, with Argentina, Brazil, Uruguay, and Mexico. All of them are members of OECD because they have the same concerns we have. They are looking for similar solutions, and we can work together from the beginning, from now, discussing the solutions we are trying to implement in you with them. We can go together in this path from now. And this is a very, very important part, not only with Latin America, of course, Africa, India, and so on. So these other regions that have the same concerns and that have different options from US, at least US from the Trump administration, I don't know, with the new administration, and from China, of course, that is a different way to organize this problem. And this is a very important point from consumers' point of view, from business point of view, to work together. Thank you for this point. Concerning thank you, Laurent, for your answers. For me, unbundling is the critical remedy, is the most difficult, but probably in some situations the only that are going to work. Is a very interesting point. Also, I would like to discuss not only about DMA, but also about DSA, about consent. It's very interesting that if I consent, but sometimes I need to consent, because without consent, I have no other solution, other answer, and I need the service. So consent in a very dependent situation is not really consent, it's not a free consent. I don't have a solution, but this is a very critical point in both proposals, not only the DMA, because for business, it's the same problem. Sometimes they need to consent. I studied some years ago the relation between industry and the big players of distribution, big hypermarkets and supermarkets and so on, the big players. And this was a similar problem. Compared, this one is more difficult to solve, but consent, they need to consent everything. They need to pay to put the products in the shelves. They need to pay everything, because if not, they cannot sell their product. So we need also to discuss in consent. And finally, we need to be smart, to prevent the creative ways to comply. Because sometimes we can be very smart to say, okay, it's everything okay. So this is a point we need to pay attention when we write the law, because if not, you are going to have a very good law on books, but a very bad law in action. A good in books, a bad in action. And so it's the work we need to do together again with lawyers, experienced lawyers like Laurent and the others that have worked in this matter, that know very well how the big platforms are working, because there are probably some points we cannot prevent, but others we need to pay attention from the very beginning. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria Manuel. I've received 2 questions by email from the audience. I don't know who sent them, but I'm happy to raise them and maybe ask each of you, a few comments to conclude this session, because we are reaching the hour. So that will be basically 3 questions. One is, do you expect a lot of resistance from member state or even in the colleagues in the parliament for adoption of this legislation? Second, other than the tremendous amount of lobbying, and we've read a lot of article already of all these gatekeeper opening the checkbooks and readying a deluge of lobbying on the parliament and the institution. Other than this tsunami of influencing, what kind of technical or legal measure can be expected from dominant players, from the gatekeepers? So these are the two questions that I received anonymously from the audience. And maybe if we have time, I'll ask Alban and also Laurent to say what you expect in terms of deliverable for this legislation for your companies or for customers in the cloud computing environments. But first, Eva and Maria Manuel on the first two questions we received from the audience. Thank you.
Just the second question, I had an interruption, Francisco, if it's okay to be fast. The second question.
Yes, do you want me to repeat?
Yes, I heard the first, but not the second.
So, so the first one on resistance from member state or even parliament colleague, and the other one was what technical or legal measure can be expected coming from the gatekeepers, the dominant players in this debate. So that was the question I received.
So resistance, I expect to have a big debate, and I expect it would take a lot of time until we are on the same page. But I don't see resistance in terms of like the principles we mentioned and vision we all have and the need to regulate, because I also think that we talk about like more responsibilities for the super big ones, and I cannot see Europeans having the approach that maybe you can see in US or China. So I think the approach here will be that we need to find a way to proceed. So there will be, I don't know, I wouldn't call it resistance. I would say we will debate a lot on what should happen or not, and how, and the different approaches. And as for the what the gatekeepers would do, of course they would lobby, and I would be happy to meet with them and understand if there are safety issues, if there are issues of privacy, that they think we would create problems there. But of course, if they are concerned about like their business model and their leading position in the global market, then I think we wouldn't be compromising. So this is a decision, and this package to control, to let's say to set rules for to the internet, it came and it's mature and it will take place, and we cannot fail. And but of course it's flexible. We should understand what are the consequences, because you can change one thing that you believe changes and controls one platform, but then it could create huge problems to the services or the privacy or the software safety of another platform. So we have to understand it, and I hope they will use the lobby money for good to have people that understand the technology and privacy to inform us and to make sure they will commit into things that they will agree we should have done 20 years ago. So I'm quite positive, and I've seen that US and China and Chile and Brazil, everybody waits to see what Europe will do. And the GDPR, although before the Cambridge Analytica, they were saying, okay, we don't need it. These Europeans, they don't want to have innovation. That's why they don't have unicorns. After what happened, they said we need legal certainty. It was very useful to have GDPR, so we know where we stand. I think we have to have the same ambition for legal certainty. I think they can adapt. They are too big to take this responsibility. And in the end, it's going to be important that we have at the core of our thinking and vision the protection of users, people, basically, and customers and businesses. So I think we will find the gold balance there. And I think my colleagues, also under the light of the pandemic, they are much more aware of the need to set rules in the digital space. So I have the feeling that we all want to move very fast. We cannot even understand why we haven't done it before. So we are rushing into different levels to proceed.
Francisco, to continue what Eva said, I think there could be three types of reaction: lobbying, legal, or technical. As far as the lobbying part is concerned, I believe lobbying has already taken place. And when you see the actual results of the text we are reading today, this lobbying has not been extremely efficient. That means that the text today is really the outcome of a very long reflection on these issues that everybody at the Commission, at the Parliament, the level of private practitioners recon their weapons. So that's the first point. I don't think the text is going to move so much now for that reasons, in particular when the philosophy of the text is to deal with, one, unfair competition, and two, as Eva said, protection of consumers. So lobby reaction, there will be, as I said, some people will try to water down the text, but I'm pretty sure the basic philosophy will remain. What kind of legal reaction gatekeepers could put? They could try to attack the text in itself based on the legal basis, based on other usual legal instruments. Here also, from a quick reading yesterday, I believe the text is quite robust in this respect, and I don't see immediately what kind of legal attacks gatekeeper could mount in order to try to fight that text. The third issue that was raised in this interesting question is the technical reaction. It is true that on a case the firm has been also working on for the press editors in France and also in Spain, San Francisco. The first reaction of the famous gatekeeper was to actually remove immediately the service and say, look, you are bothering me, look how important I am to you, let's just stop the tap from flowing. That's a possible technical reaction. We have seen that eventually legal action can take time to come back to that. I don't see again how, given the principles that are in the text, we could have actual technical retaliation from the gatekeeper. It seems difficult for me to. And then the other example was to stop actually providing a service. We have seen that in other parts of the world after being legally attacked, and other gatekeeper reacted like this. But removing service for a gatekeeper can cost them a lot of money. So I am relatively confident that the three types of actions will not be so obvious, Francisco.
Thank you. Interesting perspective on the possibility to retaliate. It's something we didn't think about. Maybe a quick word from Alban and what he expects the deliverable of this regulation, including on licensing of software in the cloud. And then the last word maybe for Maria Manuel to conclude this very interesting panel.
Thanks, Francisco. I will be quick since I know we are already over time for 5 minutes. So to make it very short, what we expect is that the market will function properly and take into account, I would say, properly the continuum between, I would say, the old IT world, the on-premise world with software licenses, and the cloud market. So this continuum needs to be taken into account. And this, we really need that unfair practices from some dominant players on some market segments are not used in the detriment of our customers, and in the end, in the detriment of our businesses, which are cloud infrastructure services. And to recap to everyone, so cloud infrastructure services are not software services. So it is data centers, servers, virtual machines inside where software is run. So it's a complete different market. We should not be in a I would say in a dual phase market where software and infrastructure are used one against the other. So it needs to be really separate. And if we are able to have this to that regulation, I think we will have something that is workable for any industry using cloud services in Europe. And this will bring, I would say, more innovation, faster innovation. And if we are able to have this regulation fast, I think this would make pressure on the market to change behaviors very quickly. So, so this is what we expect.
Thank you, Alban. I think one of the determining factor to have a fast regulation will depend on the IMCO committee, and that's what I would like to have the Vice President of IMCO committee, MEP Laetitia.
We are putting pressure on you.
To conclude.
So very short, because we are at the end of our time. I would like to quote Churchill. This is not the end. It's not even the beginning of the end, but it's perhaps the end of the beginning. And I don't believe that. I think there is a big consensus in the parliament. I'm not sure about all the groups' positions, but I guess there is a large consensus in the parliament about essentials. So we are discussing today on the DMA and even on the SCA. Sometimes on the SCA, we probably have some points we disagree. But my point is that we must not rush. We have to move fast if we want to be effective. If we spend 2 years or more discussing on fine-tuning these proposals, at the end of the day, in 2023, the platforms are going to be very different. How many here knew TikTok before the pandemic starts 9 months ago? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for being available just before Christmas and a very, very busy period. This was the first, hopefully, of other panels and webinars on the DMA. But we were, I think, the first on the substance. So let's be part of history and let's keep making history. Thank you very much to all of you.
Thank you, Francisco. Thank you.
Happy Christmas. Happy New Year.
Merry Christmas.
Thanks to all of you.
Stay safe. Merry Christmas.
Thank you very much.